Hi, in this video we're going to install the Exchange onto server B. That's our mail server. We've already got, it's already a web server as per the previous video, and we might also note that there's a web server on server A as well. So server B doesn't need to be a full domain controller. What we do need to do is to get all the resources that we need onto this machine and then run the Exchange install. Okay, so let's starting up all our virtual machines. I've got them already running, and here's my server A, here's my server B. And in order to start our Exchange, we need to gather all the resources. So if we open up our file browser, head off to our NAS box, so NAS FG 47, got to put the double backslash in front, into the apps folder, and we're looking for applications, and then Exchange, and Exchange 2013. So assuming that we've got on our server B, if we just check with our settings, if we look at the advanced, we've got the drag and drop bi-directional, so we can just drag to the desktop of this machine this folder. So we're just going to check this folder. It's got all of the steps all numbered, so we're just going to drag that folder. If I can just drag the folder, it keeps on for some reason. How about we go copy? No, it doesn't want to paste. Okay, let's give it another go. There we go, drag and drop. But is it doing anything? The alternative is to access our NAS FG47 directly from our server B, which is also possible to do. Okay, so drag and drop operation with failed. Okay, so that's what we'll do. So what we're going to do is we'll open up via the networking. We'll open up double backslash NAS FG47, and it fails. Principally because it doesn't know how to resolve that name. So we can just give it the IP address 192.168.47.1, and that particular device, the NAS box, is in a completely different domain to what server B is, so we need to put the domain name in here, otherwise it's trying to go into the GWMP domain. So the domain that this one's plugged into is WWIT Labs, and normally you would just use all students and then password of student. I'm going to use my credentials, into the apps folder, and then into the applications, and then into Exchange, and here is our Exchange 2013. So let's just put that on the desktop. I'm trying. Can I just drag it? Has it got an error message? No, it hasn't. Copy. No idea why this thing doesn't want to copy. Control A. Yes, I can do that. Can I copy that? Okay. So over on our desktop, right mouse clicking on our desktop does nothing. Okay. So let's open up this PC in a new window, drive C. Let's just paste it into the, I'll create a new folder in here first. So let's go new folder, Exchange, like that, and I'll paste it into here. That was a bit of a struggle. Normally with the bidirectional drag from the host to the guest, we should have been able to just drag this directly from the NAS box onto the desktop, but for some reason it's not playing ball with us. Anyway, on drive C, in the Exchange folder, we now have all of the steps that's required for us to install Exchange. So what we're going to do is follow these steps. Be aware that this is our PowerShell button down here right beside our server manager. So starting from step 0, normally we would just open that with a notepad. If you change the format to a word wrap, you can see the entire text line because it's just in a single line. This 0th step just says open up Active Directory, check the replication, sites and servers. You'll see both servers added. Well, we've only got one server, so we won't see that. And select Replicate Now option. So we've already done that first step, or it's not necessary because we don't actually have server A and server B both as servers. So we can go to step 1, open with notepad. Up to this point now, select Replicate Now. That's all covered. So what we need to do is open Windows PowerShell and then install Windows features rset-adds. So what we're going to do is we're going to highlight that part, copy. We're going to open up our PowerShell, right mouse click that into there and hit enter. Okay, so there's no restart needed. It was successful. So let's just minimize this out of the road. We can kill this step 1. We're up to step 2. Open with notepad. Again, in the PowerShell, we need to do these 3 steps. So we're going to go import module server manager. Right mouse click, copy, flick back to our server manager, right mouse click in there and hit enter. You just get a flashing cursor on the next line. It's done. Back to our notepad. We'll do step 2, which is, I've got to get every single letter down to there. Copy, right mouse click, enter. Now this is installing a lot of the services. You'll notice it's installing a web server as well, web start, compression. So that will set the web server up for the way that we actually want it. Most of it's already there. this installation should proceed fairly rapidly. As you can see, we're already up past 70%, so that's good. Oh, we're actually past 90%. Okay, so that's now finished. You'll see that it says that it requires a restart. So success was true, restart yes, successful, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I'm going to exit out of that. I'm going to restart the computer, and it actually says to restart computer is run restart. I think you can just go run restart computer. Copy. That would probably be in the PowerShell. No. Okay. Maybe I didn't need the run or something like that. Anyway, we need to restart the computer. So let's kill that. Remember, we just finished step 2, so we're up to step 3 is the next one. So we're going to restart the computer. Restart. It's a planned, and continue. You'll notice it's continuing to install the features. It's fairly normal. Okay, it's spontaneously done another reboot. Okay, so Control-Alt-Delete. It's logging back in as the domain administrator. So that applies the settings, and okay, so we're going to go back to our drive C. There's our exchange. We're up to step 3. So that's an application. So we're just going to right mouse click and run as administrator. That installs a unified communication API runtime, and we'll tick that we've read and accepted all that sort of stuff and go install. We've still got our server manager running in the background there. It looks like it's going to install Microsoft Visual C++ runtimes. And a link server. Okay, so that installation is complete. We're up to the next one, which is the filter packs. So again, right mouse click, run as administrator. You can see it's flashing here. Okay, so we can go, sorry, next. Tick the box, I accept, next. Okay, so that was fairly quick. So then we go to Service Pack 1 for the filter pack. And right mouse click run as administrator. Click to accept it and continue. Okay, so this next step, this application is 1 GB in size. It's actually a compressed file, and all we're doing is uncompressing it. So we have to run this first before the next 3 steps would actually work, because we're actually using some of these steps. Now, when we extract these, the thing to do is to put them in a directory that's fairly easy to navigate to once we're in the PowerShell. So we'll run that. You can see it's verifying the file just to make sure that nothing's corrupted. And allows us to extract to. So now we're already in C Exchange, so if you extracted it, you'd be extracting it into this directory here, and it'd just be a bit of a mess. So I'm going to browse and put it into a different folder. I'm just going to create another folder. So browse, go to drive C. Okay, look, it looks like I have to make a folder anyway, so let's just, I'm just going to call it EX. Okay, so I go EX. It's saving everything into that folder. If I backed out of here, I'd be able to see that I've now created this little EX folder, and it's actually extracting everything into here. So, and that's where I'm currently at. So it's extracting that 1 GB file into the C:\\EX directory. We can come back later on and clean these directories up. These installation directories, Okay, so the extraction is now complete. We can move on to step 7. Open with Notepad. Okay, so it says here, open the Active Directory, browse to the setup location, and then run this command here. Now, enter your Exchange organisation name. So what we do is we actually change this right now to Get Well Medical Practice, and we need to open Windows PowerShell. And we need to, as it says, to browse to our setup location. So from our PowerShell here, we're going to change directory back to the root and to the EX directory. You can see that we're now in a different directory. And if I do the dir to show the directory contents, you can see all the stuff that's in there, and the very last file is actually this setup.exe, which is what we're going to be using. So back to our notepad, what we're going to be using is full stop / setup. So we're going to be calling up this setup program, here. And then we're going to go prepare Active Directory and then all the other stuff, and the organisation name we've changed to the Get Well Medical Practice from what it was originally. So you need to make sure you include that full stop. So right mouse click, copy, back into here, hit the enter key. So that thing there pulls this setup program up, and then with all these command line switches, including the Get Well Medical Practice. So it's actually using the setup program of the Exchange to handle all of the prerequisites that Exchange needs. So you can see here it's doing a prerequisite analysis. The organisation preparation would relate to the this organisation name, Get Well Medical Practice. So while that's continuing at the moment, we're up to 30%. Just a quick look at, back at our notepad. Okay, so then we'd be on to the next step. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the next step. I don't want to save any changes. We just changed the default organisational name to Get Well Medical. We don't need to save it. So here's step 8, open with Notepad, and we can see that that would be the next line that we're ready to do. So back to our PowerShell, we just have to wait for it to finish doing its organisation preparation, and it's currently at 35%, so this is a little bit tedious. You can pause or fast forward or whatever we need to do to wait. Okay, so back in here we've got the organisation preparation is now completed. So we're moving to the next step. We're going to copy the step 8, right mouse click, and copy. Don't forget to get the full stop at the front. Back into our PowerShell, right mouse click. Why did they not go in? Didn't want to copy in for some reason. Copy. Okay. So it's pasted in, right mouse click. Hit the enter. Okay, so what this command's doing is preparing the schema. Now the schema is the Active Directory database. So what we're doing now is actually altering the Active Directory database to include things like mailboxes and other things like that. So what we're doing is we're actually altering the Active Directory database, changing the fields that are in the database, things that are recorded about, for example, users. Users will now have mailbox addresses and things like that, which will be part of the user database. So we're adding those extra fields to the database that Active Directory has about users, etc., and groups and things like that. So again, this thing does seem to be zipping along a bit faster than the previous one. We're currently up to nearly 60%, or 57, 8, 60, yep. These steps on a spinny hard drive can be tediously slow. This is on a solid state, so it's probably a little bit faster. It's always that last couple of percent. Okay, so that's now completed successfully. So that was step 8. So we'll kill that. Back to our directory. Step 9. Open with Notepad. We need to do the same thing. Browse to the setup location and put in up to the full stop. Copy. Back to right mouse click and hit enter. So this is now, we prepared the schema before, now we're preparing the domain. So we're changing some of the domain setup to handle the fact that it's got an Exchange server. And it's done a prerequisite analysis, as it always does, and preparing domain progress. Okay, so we'll just pause this video until that's completed. Oh, it's completed, that's good. That was nice and fast. Okay, so that's step 9 now done. And back to here, the last step is to actually run the setup program that was extracted in step 6, actually. Yep, step 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to run that as an administrator. So I can close my PowerShell here at the moment. So just type in exit. I'm going to go to that directory called EAX, down to the bottom where the setup program is, right mouse click and run as administrator. And it's now checking for updates. So I'm just going to say no, don't check for updates right now, and we'll go next. So it's going to copy files, and we can minimize this out of the road. So we're into the setup proper now, running the setup program that's actually been extracted out of out of the Exchange server. So we've done all the prerequisites, we've done all the preliminary stuff. We're now actually doing the install. Okay, so we'll just hit next. Something about license agreement, we always accept. Next. Using recommended settings or don't use. Exchange server will automatically check online for solutions when encountering problems, blah, 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 blah. Don't use recommended settings. Manually configure these settings after installation is completed. We probably don't need to provide usage feedback to Microsoft. So I'll just go don't use recommended settings and go next. We need the mailbox role and the client access role, and by default we get this one that's ticked and this one that's ticked as well. So main thing is mailbox role and client access role need to be ticked. Next. Disable malware scanning. I'm going to go yes, disable it. That's another issue. I mean, we could actually have malware scanning in place where it downloads all of the signatures and scans attachments and things that come via the email. At the moment, we just want to get the thing installed and email to work, so I'm just going to disable the malware scanning for the moment. Go next. Of course, you can reconfigure that later on if you want to. It's not a problem. So again, in the readiness checks, it's configuring prerequisites. Now, most of that we've already done. We've done that via the PowerShell, so this should be reasonably fast. Prerequisite analysis. Just click install. So it's got 14 steps. We're currently in step 2. The first step was all that prerequisite stuff. Again, the speed of the hard drive that you're installing to at this point can change the installation speed significantly. So I'm just going to pause this video for a moment. Okay, so we've now finished the 14 steps, and setup's now completed. It says, congratulations, setup has finished successfully. So we can tick the box here to launch Exchange Administration Center after finishing the setup. So it's not a bad thing to do, and we'll go finish. Now, the interesting thing to look at is that it calls up the name of the server and then ECP, Exchange Control Panel. And we're not going to use recommended settings. And here's our Exchange Control Panel. So the very first time that you log in, it wants the domain and username. So Getwell Medical Practice / administrator. And the password, and sign in, and we'll need to remember that. We'll need to complete a normally it's a well, actually, I think it's when you jump into the mail the first time, it asks you for a time, like a time zone type information. So it's working. Okay, so we've got in, which is good. To be fair, an Exchange install often does not work this well, and the fault is often the fact that it doesn't start all the services correctly. We can see here we have the administrator user account, and if we were to create a new mailbox, we're just going to assume that everything's working perfectly. So we're going to create a new mailbox, a new user mailbox, and it's going to be a new user rather than an existing user. And so I'm just going to go doc1. And is doc1 is his login. Password is the usual password. And before I actually go save, and we'll check to make sure that this has worked, we're just going to whiz back to server A and have a look under the administrative tools and have a look at our users and computers, and we'll have a quick look just to make sure, to prove that doc1 is not a user. Here we've got the administrator, but there is no doc1 user here at all. So looking at all the D's, so we're to E there and C there, there's no doc1 in between there. Okay, so back to our server B, we're just creating a new mailbox, and you know, this is often what happens is we end up creating all our users actually on the Exchange server, because it allows us to create the user and the mailbox in one step. Now what's happening here is our server B is contacting server A and you know, getting the creation of doc1 as a user. So here's doc1, he's got a mailbox. I'm going to whiz back to server A, and we'll do a refresh. Where's the refresh button? Hit the refresh button. And there's our doc1 user. Okay, so we have created a new user on our Exchange server and created a mailbox simultaneously. So if we have existing users there, so if I go new user and I create a you know, doc2, give him the usual password, and his password never expires and all that sort of stuff. So we've got this doc2 user that's been created. If we go back to our Exchange server, even if we do a refresh, you know, we have a user, but that user does not have a mailbox. And so in this case, we would have to go to the user mailbox and select an existing user and browse, and it comes up with a list of all of the users in Active Directory that don't have a mailbox. So here's our doc2 user, and we just click and for some reason I might not have clicked it. Okay, so doc2 is the new user, and go save, and that would create the mailbox for that user. So there's the two ways to have users and mailboxes. We can create the user in Active Directory here, perhaps even script hundreds of users if we want, but then we would still have to go back to our Exchange server and create the mailboxes for each one of those users. Now, earlier versions of Exchange allowed you to do a browse, have all of the users come up, highlight the entire lot and go create a mailbox, and it'll create a mailbox for the hundreds of users that are created that don't have mailboxes yet, and that would work. Current version, you have to do them individually, which is a nuisance. There's probably a way of finding a script that you can run in PowerShell that would allow you to recursively search Active Directory, find a user that doesn't have a mailbox and create the mailbox for them. So it's just a matter of either finding an existing script that does that one or creating one. So it appears that we have the ability to create mailboxes and create users. So we actually created doc1, and you know, that's not difficult. So the thing now to do is to make sure that sending email works. So we're going to sign out of our Exchange control panel, which is the administration. And what we would need to do is essentially the same thing, but instead of ECP, what we want to do is double backslash, HTTPS double backslash server B and then OWA, Outlook Web Access. Not working. Okay. Probably because I've got two B's in there. Okay, so here's our Outlook web app. And there's the administrator and password, so we'll just sign in as that person. And here, as I said before, you'd need to put in your time zone, and so I go to the plus 10 hours. Canberra, Melbourne, Sydney, that's good. Save. And what we're going to do is create a new mail and send it to, say, doc1. So new mail to, and let's just assume I can't find who the user is. Can I do a search for I'm just seeing whether I can actually see the user doc1 or doc2. It's not actually seeing anyone. So I'm going to go, I'll just go doc1. And the subject is hello. And hi there. Send it. Now we'll it's not finding doc1 as the person. If we did, we could add them to contacts. So my suggestion here is, while I can't send emails, is that possibly we don't have all of the correct services running. Now this is typical of a setup of Exchange. It installs, but you really need to do a reboot after the install, and you need to make sure that all of the services that are required do actually start. And just after the install doesn't mean that they're all started. So let me exit out of that. Oh, probably should sign out first. Stay on the page. Sign out. Leave this page. Let's see if it signs out. Yes, it's out. Okay. So now, in order to check the services, the best thing to do is do a quick search for services. That would probably be it there, on there. And I'll maximize this, go to a standard format and double click there and get the full width. So what we're looking for is the Exchange. So if we look for MS Exchange, you can see there's a whole bunch of services from there down to here, and we need to make sure that the majority of those are actually running. The only real one that we don't need is this one, the server extensions for Windows Server Backup. Now you'll notice that there are quite a few of these that are running that are manual, and some that aren't running either. I'm surprised that we've got as many running as we actually have. So let's look at the IMAP4. These things should be automatic. So I'm going to look at the properties of that and change that to automatic. Apply. And change that one to automatic as well. And our migration workflow probably should be running. And our POP3 and back end for POP3 are both manual as well, so we should change them to be automatic so that when we restart our Exchange server, these will start up automatically. Properties, set it to automatic, and everything else looks okay. So this has actually worked quite well in that all of our Exchange services are running, and we've now got them all set to automatic. That's a relatively rare occurrence after an install. So let's exit out of that and do a reboot. Restart. It's a planned restart. Now, after we've done a restart, we're going to jump straight back into the services and just confirm that they're turned on, and then we need to check to make sure that that our email is actually working. We can send emails to and from users. To do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this back up as the administrator. That's good. I'm just going to check to make sure that we don't have any firewall issues in here. Of course, I'm trying to get it to do things while it's still starting. And while that's happening, I'll have a look at our Windows 10 machine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sign out as the administrator and log in as Doc1 perhaps. So other user, login as doc1 and password. Because doc1's the first time in our Windows 10 machine, it's got a new profile and therefore it's setting things up and all the usual stuff that Microsoft does. Okay, so there's our server manager running in the background. It's sort of stuck at the moment. Okay, there's doc1. I'm going to do a search for Internet Explorer and see if I can't pin that to the taskbar. And this user needs to have his proxy server settings set, so I'll just hit stop there. It is ask me later, and let's go and have a look. Internet options. Okay, let's start it again. Hit the stop button. Internet options. www.google. And on the connections and on the LAN settings, we'll set the proxy. .edu.au, leave it port 80. We're going to bypass for anything that starts with a local address, so 192.star. So anything that's got a local address will be excluded from going to the proxy server. So hitting the home will get us back out to the internet, which is what we expected. No, I don't want it. And if we do an image search and look for, not interested, say foxes, we can see that it's working. Okay, so what we're interested in is, can we get to our email? Remembering that our Windows 10 machine is in a completely different subnet to our servers. We'll just check that to make sure. Network settings, we're on switch 2, whereas one of our servers is on, our web server is currently on switch 1. Okay, so there's a router in between those two switches, obviously. And what we want here is, if I could just go, this is Internet Explorer, yes. Server B. Now what we get is an access denied because I've gone HTTP and it should have been HTTPS. So let's go S, and there's my Outlook web access. So from my Windows 10 machine in a different subnet, I'm able to get to the web server. I'm going to put in GWMP / and doc1. Sign in. and of course I have to set the time zone and whatnot. So that's plus 10 hours. You only have to do that the first time and save it. Okay, so what I'm looking for is that I can create a new mail to the administrator. Subject, I'm here, and send it. Now what we want to know is, does this thing sit in the drafts or does it actually send it? So it looks like it went to drafts and then actually sent it to the administrator. So back out on the server B, if I log this person in, hang on, back to here and go search for iExplore. Pin to the taskbar, there's Internet Explorer. And I'm going to do the same thing with here. I'll stop this machine, make sure that I have the right proxies in, connections, LAN settings, put my proxy in, port number 80, and I'm going to put my exclusions in again for anything that's a local address. And hit the home button. That should get out to Google. Images, kayaks. There's kayaks, okay. So we know that that works. So if I open up server B, it did flash up, so why can't I see it? It's going to go to AWA like that. Server B. It does flash up and then it disappears. So I'm wondering whether it's an issue with this particular version of Internet Explorer. Possible. I'm just going to close all tabs and give it another go. We know that it gets out to the internet. Local host, let's just try local host. Local host fails because it's not a HTTPS, it's HTTP. And if we put an S in there and continue to the website, we get our web access. It should have worked with, instead of going localhost, should have worked with server B as well. I'm going to kill that and see if I can do it with server B. Server B. That one there, server B, outlet web access. Interesting. Localhost works, server B doesn't. So, go figure. Continue on to the website. Okay, I'll figure that out a bit later on. We're going to log in as GWMP /administrator. And our usual password. Why can't I click into it? It says localhost is not responding. Recover web page. This thing's struggling for some reason. Administrator. It keeps on dying. Close all tabs. Unknown reason why that's dying. We've got the let's try server A. Okay, so let's go to server. Let's go server B. Okay, we don't have an exclusion in this. That's our problem. Connections, proxy. Yes, we do. A 9.2. Okay, so HTTPS server B, Outlook Web Access. We continue onto the website. We get to it. GWMP /administrator and our usual password. We've got in the inbox, we've got a message from Doc1, which is good. So if we want to reply to that, hi there, and send. Okay, so it did send one, but it also had one from before which had not been sent. So if I continue to edit, one and doc2, hello, we'll send that. That one did actually send, so it must have been just something temporary that I had with the name. So those have both been sent now, and this dude over here now has on the inbox, he's got two, which was the first one and you know, the second one that I was in the drafts and I sent. So we're sending emails from two different machines to two different accounts. So the email server technically is working, and that's what we wanted to see. Okay, so that ends this particular video.